Mr. Bill, thank you. That's from Terry, yeah. Oh, yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. I was on the old photos anyway. Well, hey, with all those clusters, I would see what? I don't know how they set yours up, but here, I just wanted to show you how mine is set up so that I don't have to go to the meetings and all that stuff. See, what I did was, see up here, I have my inbox, which is for the, and then I go to agendas. He set it up so I go right to the agenda. I don't know if you have that. Come on, there. See, and then I'll go continue, and then see, mine is a little different, and then I just join the meeting, present and not voting, and save, and I'm there. Yeah, sometimes you gotta, the way some of the other people do, you gotta jump around. And this here is for me. I'm not computer. I push wrong buttons all the time. That's it. I know.
So I guess I didn't have an option of present not voting.
Yeah.
But this is the same. It's the same thing though.
Yeah. No, it is the same. It's probably the one that they send out to the public. It says council agendas on there.
Oh, right.
See if you, let's see.
Hello.
Good morning, good morning. Have a special today. Try that, suckers. That is like, these are from the health food store. I buy these for the kids for my martial arts class, and on Thursday, if they're really good, I'll pass out a sucker for the, but they used to go look in there and.
Does this mean I've been well behaved?
Yes. That means you've been well behaved. Yep.
Resourceful?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ed.
And
That's really
and
thoughtful.
then like they, oh, what do you call it? If they haven't been all that, then they don't get. They don't get. Nobody does. If I have one bad student, everybody's punished, so to speak. No.
What I'm also hearing is everyone else has been good, and I'm getting those reward.
Right. You're getting the reward. Yes.
These are very good. Thanks.
Nothing. It's been great since then. So yeah, I was gonna bring it up.
Oh man, I am so tired of allergies. I just look at me. I wake up like this in the morning. I shouldn't. I was born and raised here. I didn't have allergies like I have this year. It's like.
Perfect.
Are they worse this year?
Oh, I've never had them this bad in my life.
I knew they were. Usually you have them.
Yeah, lightly. But I'm 77 years old, and these are the worst things ever. And I was raised on the farm, baling hay, all that stuff. And
I know that you will come introduce everyone, but just while we're here, did you meet Chris Zimmer yet?
no, I haven't. Chris?
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you.
You'll meet everybody, but since you're right next to each other, I wanted to make sure you just got to say hi.
Good morning.
Sir.
Well, welcome to Montrose. Thank you. Hope you enjoy it.
I have so far. I'm sure I will.
Okay.
Very informative already.
Oh, boy, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah.
Wait till you, they just started.
Adam, this is Chris.
Hey, Adam. Chris.
Yeah.
Adam's one of our newest council members. He's just elected in April, and Chris Simmer's our fellow through ICMA.
Right.
I'll bring him down the line really quick. Right here.
Oh, I know what I need. I need a new backpack.
I forgot my button. My name tag.
They'll get you one with the city logo and everything. Just ask her.
I got
And
one.
shirts and stuff like that.
You're gonna get tired of me showing you off, but
I have another favor.
yes,
I need a new backpack.
you need a new
A
backpack.
little bit bigger,
Okay.
okay? Because my new book doesn't fit.
Okay.
Morning, everybody.
Fight it, and then the computer and other papers.
Unless you like this.
That's a good backpack.
This is our regularly scheduled work session for May 4th,
It's holding up.
10 a.m. It is 10:02. Apologize for being running a little late here. And we will go right into our discussion items. But before we do that, I just want to let the public know that we are changing things up a little bit. Now we are allowing for discussions for specific items on the discussion items list, if you have your agenda in front of you, for the public. And the way that it'll work is that we will have the discussion from the department head, and then there will be questions and answers from the council itself. And then after that, the public is welcome to ask questions so that we can dispel any misconceptions about what might be on, in depth. And it's a great opportunity for our citizens to be able to ask the questions when the department head is here, because they've got more in-depth knowledge of what's happening on those items. But just like we do in the public comments section, everything will have to be very much in line with everything that we're respect-wise and everything like that. And I'll go through that right now. I'll go ahead and just go through this. The call for public comment, when it happens, okay, on agenda item is a time when concerned members of the community may publicly voice their concerns and discuss items of interest. And they are going to be specific to those items on the list here. Comments made during this time should be addressed to the council and to the department head and pertain, I'm sorry, I'm going through this because it's a little bit of a different situation than a general public comment. But the council and the staff is not inclined to engage in discussion, but we may have discussion, but not debate. Please refrain from any personal attacks or disagreements, personnel and employment matters, and the use of profanity, ethnic, racial, or gender-oriented slurs, as they may be considered disorderly conduct, which violates state or local law. So we'll go ahead and get started here with the 6700 Cedar Creek Bridge Replacement Design Contract.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Excuse me
yes,
for interrupting, but for point of clarification on the public comment, are you placing a time restriction such as the 3
Yes.
minutes that we have?
Yes, and it will be a 3-minute limit as well, and then
Thank
we'll
you.
limit discussion to 3 minutes as well. And if you need additional time, then we will set up a time with you to go over that information in more depth. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mayor. Looks like I'm a few items on the agenda today. I'm calling this the good news, bad news, good news sandwich. So the first one is the good news. This is the contract award recommendation for design of the 6700 bridge. For anybody who's, let me show the picture here, who's driven on 6700, you're probably aware of this bridge because you have to slow down and cringe a little bit as you go across it. So 6700 road is the kind of the secondary minor arterial, main north-south. You got the Hillcrest corridor, then the 6700 corridor. As part of the long-range build-out of 6700, it will be a kind of an eventual minor arterial the whole way, similar to that extension piece that was just built. And in support of that, we need to kind of knock out some various pieces that are restrictions along that corridor. So this is in line with that larger vision of the eventual corridor completion, is fixing this bridge. It's a pretty narrow 24-foot at best bridge built over 50 years ago. And certainly doesn't meet modern standards from a safety, guardrail standpoint, width standpoint. Not obviously very user-friendly for bicycles or pedestrians. So the project we are looking to do is its replacement, and likely in 2027. But for now, getting through the design, and that's pretty typical of capital projects. We'll try and design in 1 year, get through all that design and permitting, and then work towards construction, or towards the end of that design, have good budgetary numbers so we know what we're dealing with, so we can budget for the next year, and then go towards construction. Just to kind of give a big picture view of the corridor, this is out of our capital plan. So eventually 6700 will get a signal at the highway as well. This is the bridge replacement that we're talking about here. Eventually, within the nearest term, the Niagara and 6700 roundabout, eventually all minor arterial corridors get roundabouts. Right now, the side volumes aren't large enough to warrant them on these yet, but likely as these build out, and then eventually we've also secured all of the right-of-way, that 6700 will turn into Oak Grove here, which was part of the master plan for the bridges. So just to give a feel for our larger vision of, you got your Hillcrest corridor, which ties to Woodgate, you got your 6700 corridor, which ties to Oak Grove and Ogden. And so you're getting those main north-south arteries to keep as much pressure off of, ultimately you just got to give cars places to go. So Townsend can only hold so much, Hillcrest can only hold so much. So as growth occurs, this is all geared towards the larger vision. And this aligns with our comp plan and our capital plans. But so the bridge project itself, we put out an RFP for design. With that, we kind of go through a pretty detailed scope of work. So I'll just run through pretty briefly what that entails, so you know what goes into a bridge design. So we go into these, we have to do all the property and base map work. So getting the surveyors out there. We do geotechnical, hydraulic, and wetland design studies, so understanding what to do for the foundations. Wetlands come into play because they are actually jurisdictional wetlands right along the bridge itself. We think we're outside of the footprint, but you can actually have up to 1/10 of an acre and still go through permitting processes with the Army Corps, pretty straightforward. And then obviously hydraulics to make sure that the bridge is properly sized to meet all the floodplain regulations. After that, we have them doing evaluation of alternatives to kind of pick what's the most cost-effective structure type to go with before they get too deep into design. There's pros and cons of those, schedule-wise, cost-wise, constructability-wise, depending on the time of year when you build. So we dive into all that to make sure we're picking the proper structure. We're also relocating. Let me hop over to the GIS here. So within this reach, there's overhead power that would kind of generally get in the way of the new bridge. There's a water line span, there's a siphon underneath, water line span, a siphon underneath the creek for irrigation. And all of this irrigation, so anybody who's driven here similarly knows if you are 6 inches off on your driving, you're in trouble with this stuff right up against the roadway. It's not necessarily in conflict with the bridge, but the whole area will be torn up. And so we think this is a great time to also relocate this irrigation outside of what will be the future roadway. So when the time comes, we eliminate the constriction right now and the safety hazard associated with it, but also makes the future widening a lot simpler when the time comes in the future. We'll also design all the structural elements, foundations, wing walls. We're also looking to connect a sidewalk. So unique opportunity here. You have this rec trail network here along the eastern side. With the 6700 connection now done, you have really good pedestrian connectivity. Once you get onto here, you're essentially home free all the way to the rec center as far as pedestrian connectivity goes. But you still have a couple orphans up here. So this neighborhood here, and there's some more development that's been eyeing these areas. still remains relatively isolated. You can imagine walking across this bridge with a stroller would not be a comfortable endeavor. So with this, we're actually looking to finish the sidewalk connection up to Caboose to the driveway, or to the bridge here. The bridge will include a new sidewalk on this side. On this side, you already have this existing one, so on the eastern side, there won't be anything added, but we'll add sidewalk on the western side of the new bridge. And then these two neighborhoods are actually under construction right now, and as part of their obligations are constructing their portion of the sidewalk. So timing of that is, this portion is going in now. This one's a little more uncertain, but it's relatively short. And so all of that, as those come together, it lends us well that when these get done, you'll have full pedestrian connectivity now for the entire western side of 6700 Road.
So for clarification, this is most of what you're talking about is long-range planning. What we're looking at short-term is going to do similar to what we did on Ogden, where we'll replace the bridge but increase that sidewalk and the width of the roadway so we're ready for those future projects,
Yep.
correct?
So the new bridge here will be widened for the full build-out of 6700. But also, because this is so small, it's a relatively small piece, we'll do this piece of sidewalk here, just this from here to here. So whatever that is, 100 feet or something. And then what that does is then when these come in, which we do expect those to come in the next couple of years, they have something to connect to and it'll be done while we're in there. The other pieces of this, obviously plans, we'll work on there's floodplain permitting and Army Corps of Engineering permitting that goes with a project like this. So that's all in the scope. We did the RFP for all of that. When we do these types of proposals, we rate them based on price and qualifications. We don't want to generally a lowball offer that, if they're not the right team, that can end up costing us a lot more. If you get design wrong, that can be $10, $20 per dollar in construction that you saved. We don't want those kind of situations. In this case, we got 3 actually really good proposals. Goff, we've never worked with before. They're out of Durango. Delmont, who does quite a few city projects, they proposed as well. And then KLJ out of Grand Junction. In this case, Price did end up winning. So they were the lowest price, but also had a really good proposal, kind of on par with all of the others. And with that brought their rating to the highest among the 3. And so with that, through that system, it's both price and qualifications. We kind of got our cake and eat it too. We're recommending award at it's about $142,000. Those contracts are T&M not to exceed. So, we only pay for what we use. If things get simpler, we would just stop short and there might be a surplus left at the end. Like I said, we're looking to design this and get the design done this year to allow for the project to go to construction in 27. The reason we are recommending it for 27 and the big picture budget discussions are coming up, but the bridge is about at the end of its life structurally. So the deck is seeing quite a bit of corrosion. We actually had an emergency project to reinforce the H-piles on the southern abutment this spring. That came exposed with some scour. So we're hobbling along, but you can only hobble along so long, and if something were to fall apart on it, not on our terms, we're inspecting it frequently, you'd have to close 6700, which would be pretty impactful. And so, we'll see how budgets pan out. You can always do things to push it along a little further, but it is a recommendation for 27. Within 26, we budgeted $250,000 towards this design. So we're really pleased with this result. That places us $108,000 under budget. So, and that's not terribly uncommon in the design realm these days. We're seeing design engineers used to be impossible to get to look at your products. They were so busy. Now you're starting to see some that are freeing up, and supply and demand prices go down with that. And so we're excited to see this. Hopefully it's an indication that some of our pricing will get more favorable, which we're seeing on the construction side as well. So happy to answer any questions on that one.
Scott, I have a question. On the northwest part of the creek, there's a section of land there, that is going to eventually be part of that subdivision that's there.
Correct.
Are there any plans for that little section for entry and exit? Because I know that right now, for the whole subdivision on the other side, there's only one entry and one exit. And for health and safety reasons, I was just concerned that if we didn't have another exit there, but then by the same token, being that close to the bridge,
Yeah.
and kind of like the cemetery, have an entrance and an exit right there, it might, I'm not an engineer, I was just concerned about that as to what might happen in the future, because since this is like future planning.
Yep, and that's an excellent question. So we'll build the bridge, get rid of all this stuff that's in conflict to keep the bridge as compact as possible, to keep those options as open as possible going into the future. There is a subdivision proposal right now. You can see they kind of dropped off Evans Street here back in the day. I think on the assumption that they would someday either develop or acquire this property right here. It's really the only way to safely do that. And so, we're not pursuing that property as a city. We won't condemn or anything like that. But as the development comes here, we've encouraged them, like if this goes, it'd be a great purchase. Nobody wants to be pushed out of their house, so it's one of those things, if it goes on the market and the opportunity arises, or the developer can work out a deal with that owner. In order to get that sufficiently separated from the bridge, because the challenge is to transition out of this and with enough room to then be, inches from the bridge and make, any kind of turn out of there safely, does get to be pretty challenging. Once we get the final layout, we'll know if there's any kind of variations on that would be feasible. Again, we are working to make it as tight as possible, and then as part of this property developing, they did agree to dedicate whatever right of way we need for, in this case, mostly just like the wing walls that'll come off to hold the bank back here coming off of the bridge. And so it's not looking likely in the absence of the purchase of this property, but we are trying to leave the door open as much as possible, knowing that that would be advantageous for this entire area for sure.
Yeah, because I was looking at that and I'm sitting there thinking, gee, that could be pretty busy.
Yep.
And
there's nothing we're doing with the bridge that would preclude that. So if anything, it'll help to try and get it as tight and give as much room there as possible to keep that option open should the opportunity arise.
But we're not looking at buying
But
that land.
we're not, unless we're directed otherwise, but we're not looking to purchase that. And I'm not aware that that owner is looking to sell or anything. And so, it's kind of a wait it out and see. And, development doesn't happen overnight. So, just like their thoughts back in the day of if the opportunity arises, I think they'd go after it. But
I have a question about the width of the road. Is it still just going to remain 2 lanes, or is it going to 4?
So the 6700 long range will have this same template here. So you have the center turn lane, through lane in each direction, and bike lane on each sides. Let me take you down to Ogden. I'll show you what we just did there. So almost the same kind of scenario where eventually Ogden will be, full 80-foot wide center turn lanes and everything. So we just replaced this bridge 2 years ago. And you can see the pavement width here is pretty large, so that surplus just becomes shoulders for now. And same will happen here. So the through lanes will line up just the same, but when the widening happens, it's really just restriping is the only thing you have to do. The sidewalks are there, the guardrail, in this case, we'll probably have guardrails, infrastructure will all be there to protect, and no changes will be needed at all at the bridge when the time comes outside of striping.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
So one of the things that I'm looking at is that when we replaced the Ogden, because of the volume of water going through the canal, the design was based on that. One of the things I wanted to highlight that you said was that we're looking at different opportunities and different versions of that, because the one at Ogden, because the volume of water was a very different design. Cedar Creek has a lot less water flowing through it at any one point. But
Depends on the time of year. Yeah, so
yeah,
Lutzenheiser
but-
has about 100. The thing on Cedar Creek is you have to design it for the full 100-year flood flow to avoid any rise. And that number is actually surprisingly pretty enormous. But it doesn't happen but, statistically once in 100 years.
But we want to be ready for that
Yeah.
100-year date.
We don't want to be, we legally can't do anything here that would restrict or cause a rise to that. So we have to make sure to fully convey that through the bridge structure so that we're not flooding any properties that wouldn't have otherwise experienced flooding from that flood profile at the time.
Yep, I just wanted to highlight that we are looking at that as well.
Totally. Yep. That's a big part of it.
Any other questions from council? Any comments or questions from the public? No? Okay, well, we'll move on to the 2026 Water Resource Outlook. And again, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. So just to get our new council up to speed on this agenda item, so this is something we do every spring. We usually do it a little earlier, but I delayed it this year just so we'd have everybody new on board. And it's a very unique year, so it's kind of giving time to shape out how it's all going to shake out. And so I'll probably take a little deeper dive than I usually do, just so everybody's aware of kind of the water situation and given this year's kind of situation as well. So a reminder of where our water comes from. This is the standard figure that Project 7 puts out. So we purchase treated water from the Project 7 water treatment plant. That treatment plant serves 6 different water providers. The City of Montrose, which is this little red shaded here. Tri-County, which is the large blue, so they have the largest area. They cover anything that these other smaller districts don't cover. Olathe, Minokan, Chipeta, who am I forgetting? Oh, and Delta, here at the far end. So Delta's the far end. That all comes through out of the treatment plant down I think it's for the most part 24-inch trunk line that terminates at Delta's tanks. And they're the end of the line, and then all these other providers grab off along the way, and Project 7 pumps up as well, up valley, to service these areas. Or Tri-County, sorry. And we'll talk, my next agenda item is to update on the Project 7 and the resiliency project, so I'll dive a little deeper into that as well. But our physical water comes from the Gunnison River. So they divert into the Gunnison Tunnel, generally fill Fairview Reservoir, which is the only purpose of that reservoir is to service the Project 7 treatment plant. And so they can, in the winter, they'll open this for a couple days at a time, fill the reservoir, and then run for a little bit. In the summer, the Gunnison Tunnel is on full time anyway, and so they just fill the reservoir as needed to keep the treatment plant in water and then down through the system. The water rights we hold for serving Project 7 treatment plant actually sit in Ridgeway Reservoir. So when Ridgeway was built, they allocated a municipal and industrial pool of, our share is 10,000 acre feet within Ridgeway. And this is just, I think, an excellent example of we have some really awesome, really world-class infrastructure supporting, little old Montrose, and world-class partnerships, so the fact that everybody's able to work together and make all the water stuff work. So what we do is divert and keep track of every drop that comes into the treatment plant. And then in exchange for that, the water we hold in Ridgeway Reservoir through our allocation, that allocation is also combined with all these other partners, are able to release that water for use by irrigators. The reason they like that is, the South Canal dumps in right here. They can't get water by gravity anywhere upstream of there. And so Water Users is able to release from here, get some water into the diversions along the way before the South Canal, and irrigate cropland that wouldn't otherwise be irrigatable because of the exchange of water between the two. So that's where our water comes from. That kind of plays into what I'll present on as far as what we keep an eye on. But any questions on how we get our water or how this is set up before I keep going? Yeah, okay. It's a bad water year. I don't know if you guys have heard that. This is the drought monitor, which is part of the picture. There's a lot of red on that map. It keeps getting worse. That really plays into the water supply forecast. So just how dry the land is plays into what we can expect for runoff. Obviously, snowpack, reservoir levels are all part of that picture as well, but drought is one part of the equation. The snowpack is the larger and bigger piece we look at as well. These are the snowtail sites, which are the measure of snowpack above. You can group them together on these reports. This is the grouping of the snowtails above Ridgeway, which I think is only 2 sites. But you can see how just poor of a year it is. So these records are 91 through 20. That's the min. The average is the dash line there. And you got some maxes up here. This green line was last year, 2025. And this is this year. So way smaller peak run snow, below any of these records. Then also came off really early. So typically you're looking at coming off, the snow starts to come off the mountain in April, peaks mid-April, mid to early April. That happened in March, and March was not a good snow accumulation month either, but came off early. There wasn't a lot to come off in the first place. We still have a little bit there, and there's a storm this week that's, hopeful. Everybody's hopeful to always add to it and kind of lessen the severity, but not a good year, pretty challenging year. Another way to look at the snow accumulation too, this is produced by the graphic that the Bureau makes for us when we work on our Ridgeway operations with them. This is snow accumulation by month, and then these numbers are percent of average. So March, the mountain's got really no snow, which is what's usually supposed to be its best month throughout the year. These are all the averages on the right side here. But no month was really great. January was okay. February's all right. But we're in a situation where we get really excited about even hitting average or worst. Like this year is just that tough. But what that equates to, and these are also released by the Bureau, are these runoff and reservoir level forecasts that they produce. Ridgeway Reservoir is operated by Tri-County Water, so they're a partner with us. We have a lease under them to pay. We pay them for our kind of portion of the shares and our portion of the cost of Ridgeway Reservoir. Ridgeway is a Bureau of Reclamation facility, so they obviously have a lot of say in how it runs, and they work on a lot of the operational pieces. But the day-to-day operation of the dam is performed by Tri-County Water. On this graph, you'll see the blue is their expected runoff into the reservoir. The green are the expected releases. So anytime runoff is larger than releases, you're storing water. This is the reservoir level. The reservoir goes up. Anytime here, the volume between those two, runoff peters off, but then they start with some of the irrigation releases. The reservoir goes back down. What worked really well in our favor for Ridgeway this year is it started the year pretty high. Relatively speaking, Ridgeway Reservoir, the basin above it is relatively large. It's relatively, again, I'm saying we have really awesome infrastructure above us. It's a relatively large basin for a relatively small reservoir. And so on most years, it does fill pretty easily. There are exceptions, but this one, because it started so well, they do expect Ridgeway Reservoir to fill or get close to filling this year. They kind of try and target being just below the spillway, so they can run any releases that do occur through the power turbines to generate power. And then, even through this forecast, the end of the year, ending at 60,000 acre feet, keeps our actually allocation fully full even at the end of this year. And this runoff forecast is for these come from the Colorado Basin River Forecast Center. And then we actually reduce them because they're typically, it's kind of interesting, their forecasts, they take today, and then when Colorado Basin River Forecast Center, these are the ones that do PAL on everybody. From that point forward, they assume you're going to have average conditions. We all know this year's not average, and so statistically they're like, well, it could be, and they're right, it could be, but we kind of take a more conservative approach and ask them to take their number and actually reduce it to model, so that we, even under what's probably a more likely scenario, we know how it's going to behave and what we can expect. And so that's the case here, and even at that, the reservoir, if it doesn't fill, it should be within 3 or 4 feet of filling, which is a great place to be, and keeps us in our full allocation for the year. Another one we look at, just to kind of keep an eye on what's going on regionally, is Blue Mesa. Similar story with the snow tells here. This is the depressing figure. So this comes from the Bureau of Reclamation's 24-month forecast of what the Blue Mesa water level is expected to be in the reservoir. So this is historic. This is what it ran through the winter, and this is spring runoff. And I don't think you can really call that a runoff. The chart doesn't really go up. It's a little blip, and then it's just drawn down to elevation 7425, which is about as low as a reservoir can get and still pass the irrigation flows. So Uncompahgre Valley Water Users primarily operates out of Taylor Reservoir, which is above Blue Mesa. They try and fill Taylor, and then release that down through the Blue Mesa system to get to the Gunnison Tunnel for our water users. The water level gets much below that. They actually don't have, you've heard this story at Lake Powell, you don't have enough head on the thing to actually pass the flows they need to get enough water to the tunnel. So practically speaking, it's about as empty as you can get. 2022 had a similar water level. They were just above it. It'll probably be pretty close to 22 for anybody who lived here and remembered that. The good news, there's no good news in this, but the silver lining is they won't be targeting any releases out of Blue Mesa like they are the other reservoirs because there's nothing to give. So what's happening here is kind of the natural drawdown of just a really dry year. The good news is if you have a good snowpack year, you could fill Blue Mesa in about 2 cycles. There's years where it's gone up 50, 60 feet with runoff. And so obviously that's not the case this year. It wasn't the case last year. But Blue Mesa, again, it's only 1 million acre feet, like 800,000 or so reservoir. So it is similarly relatively easy to fill compared to Lake Powell, which is just enormous. And that's a whole nother story we'll talk about here. But our water doesn't come out of Blue Mesa, but a lot of people's water users and the livelihood of our agricultural community is very reliant on this, and obviously recreation and tourism. At some point here, these about in here, the boat ramps are out of water, and so fishing suffers, all the other things that the ecology of it, all those things. It's going to be a tough year on Blue Mesa. Any questions before I move on to the larger region? So next I'll just talk about the Colorado River system because that definitely has an impact on how we operate here as a community. And then I'll talk about some of the things, we're doing as a city, what it kind of means for us. And from my notes here, for what's going to be such a dry year. So you've probably all heard about Lake Powell and all of its challenges, the Colorado River system. There's a lot of, the system was built, it serves 40-some million people, a lot of agriculture. The supplies going into it are dropping. So generally river flows are down, snowpack, all the things that feed into the system are down. Uses continue to climb. And when that happens, just like a bank account, you have to draw from your savings. The savings primarily are Flaming Gorge, Blue Mesa, Lake Powell, and Lake Mead. Lake Powell's and Mead being the largest of those. Combined, they have about 50 million acre feet of storage. And they just keep dropping to where they've hit kind of a crisis level. And the states are working to try and negotiate how they cut. And everybody is kind of entrenched on their positions, and they've kind of generally been in an impasse. You have the upper basin states, everybody above Lake Powell gets half of the river, the lower basin states get half, but the way they calculate that half, administer it, evaporation losses, tributary flows, all these things are all subject to debate, and so that's where a lot of those impasses are happening and the way they've been operated historically. So long way of saying it's very uncertain where all that's going to go and how if they're going to get past that. At the end of the day, it's not like money. They can't print more money. They can't make more water. And so it has to be dealt with in some fashion. Most likely scenario is a lot of lawsuits and lawyers and federal government intervention, which is not a great thing. How this shows up, so this is Lake Powell. This is the forecast that comes from the Bureau. So this is where we are right now. So similarly to Blue Mesa, really no spring runoff jump to be expected. And I'll talk about Flaming Gorge here in a minute. But it's likely to just keep dropping. And generally, their models don't really account for this stuff very well. So it's most likely that they'd be more towards the lower end of this thing. The blue line is like maximum inflow, the red's maximum probable inflow, and then green is expected. I think we're likely to be towards the bottom of that. Critical line here is minimum power pool. So by the end of this summer, they're expecting that it'll be low enough that they can't generate power out of the dam. You get below that, and you get into dead pool. If you run this thing out, we have another bad year. This right side here is storage. So just to get a feel for how low Lake Powell would be, they're talking 1.5 million acre feet. That's not much bigger than Blue Mesa. And it's supposed, could have 20. So very, very challenging. I hope we all kind of rise to the occasion and figure it out as collective communities of the entire West. But it is a very big challenge because everybody's livelihoods are on the line. One thing the Bureau is doing, so this is kind of the teacup diagram, they call it, kind of shows all the various reservoirs on the system, their storage, and where they currently sit. Flaming Gorge is really the only kind of shining spot in it. They're relatively full, 82%, and it's a large reservoir. It's a 6 million acre foot reservoir, I think, 3 million acre foot, 3.6. And so there is some room to take water from here and put it down to here to try and prop up Lake Powell. That's a one-time solution. If it doesn't refill, there's nothing left at that point. They can't pull from Blue Mesa. It'll be pretty low at the end of the year. Navajo's relatively small. Well, no, it's larger. For some reason, they don't release a lot from Navajo, and it's probably not that. Its projections are probably similar to Blue Mesa. But so they look to, they call it shepherding. They take 1 million acre feet, release out of here, which will be good river flows through that area through the summer, but it's got to go all the way down the Green, join Lake Powell, or right above Lake Powell. This is in like Canyonlands where those two join, and try and get that water into Powell. The challenge is you release 1 million acre feet from here. Are you going to get it to there? It's a long ways. It's a lot of desert, a lot of parched land, and there's a lot of head gates you got to go past, and things happen at midnight. You can't control. So, when they did those releases out of Blue Mesa, I think it was in 2022. How much of that, I don't know if they studied it or what, but how much of that actually reached Powell, I don't know if it was ever quantified. But so it's kind of a little bit of a Hail Mary. Whether it'll make a difference, TBD. I'm sure it'll bring it up some, but certainly it's not going to fix the thing. And these things are so far down. I mean, 1983 was the last time it was full, and it was too full. They were having problems. But that was, really good continuous snowpack, and it started from a higher place to begin with. I think it's pretty realistic that all of long-range forecasts is that Powell may never fill again. It's just the nature of the system, in our lifetimes. Obviously, we'd love to see any of these full. These are just good economic drivers, but also, insurance against, water shortages. So before I dive into kind of what it means for us and what we're doing, any questions on the outlook? Too much detail, too little detail, is that all right? Am I boring anybody? Okay. The next piece is, what does it mean for us? So as a valley, water users are typically, they administer a lot of the irrigation rights through here. We're a pretty small piece. We're 4,000 acre feet or so that the city uses in a given year. Irrigation diverts, I think it depends on the year, between 600,000 to 1 million acre feet in the valley. They're operating at about 50% allocation, so they take their shares. They have their fixed water right out of their various places. They divide that amongst the users, which is typically a share as an acre of the whole system, and they're delivering 50%. So if you got 1 CFS on a typical year and on an abundant year, you get half a CFS this year, as a water user. We're subject to that as well, so a lot of our park systems do irrigate off of water users. We're also subject to that 50% allocation, so we're working within those confines to make our stuff work. What it's meaning for a lot of the agricultural community is they're just not putting as much land into production. I think the water users were saying about 30,000 or 40% of their system is not being planted this year because they don't expect to have the water. They don't want to get a crop started, not be able to finish it, and have all those input costs. You'll still see some preparing, and I think that's a crop insurance thing. Someone was asking the water users about that, of like, doesn't look like they're only putting 50% in, or 60% in. But a lot of them, they have to prepare their fields, and then they can file for crop insurance as well. But in any case, large economic hit to our agricultural community. 50% is a pretty small number when you chop the system down that much. On the public side, again, we're a pretty small piece of that. We're 4,000 acre feet. Within Ridgeway, we have our full allocation and some. Next year, based on the forecast, we expect to have our full allocation. So we don't see a reason to cut or have mandatory cutbacks. Some communities are. A lot of that's driven by they're afraid of running out. And their water resources are a little different picture. We're very fortunate. Our system was set up well by our previous generations. But that being said, obviously there is a very large issue on the entire Colorado Plateau that we are a part of. And so we want to be doing our part to make sure that we are good stewards of that. So we'll be spending a lot of time promoting conservation this summer, kind of tips dripping throughout social media throughout. We've created a drought webpage that'll be going live here pretty soon, kind of educating people on what they can do and how to reduce water use. What's unique about our system, though, is we're already seeing that happening organically. So with water rates going up, with the new Project 7 project kind of coming down the pipe, and then just general awareness, we have individualized water data. We can look at neighborhood by neighborhood. A lot of the neighborhoods are per capita water use is relatively low, like as low as any program could get them. Because I think culturally, myself included, I don't want to mow a big lawn, and I don't want to pay for that water. And I think people are learning that in the West, that there's a balancing point. Everything's a trade-off in water. You make it all rock, and you're going to have a higher heat bill, or a higher AC bill. But and we want to keep our community looking nice. So we're obviously working to strike that balance and be responsible stewards of it. That includes a lot of our park watering and stuff too, making sure you don't have errant heads, making sure you're watering at night to the best you can. I will note in some cases in our parks, our cycles, there's so many of them that they try and water at night, but some do spill into the day. If people see that, that's why. Yeah, just trying to help people understand what's going on and help them to make the decision to do the right thing. And it doesn't take a lot to keep your grass alive. It doesn't have to necessarily be lush. The challenges are in some of the, you get into the larger estate-style subdivisions on the fringe of town and getting into the county. A lot of them have irrigation water, and even at 50%, they can still make a lawn really green. And so you'll see some of that, but that's usually not on city water. A lot of that's happening on the irrigation systems or out in the county that we don't have any land use control over. But the state has also implemented, and we've adopted turf restrictions. So a lot of, as of a year ago, most commercial properties or residential properties with common areas that aren't functional, like non-parks and stuff like that, all that does not allow turf under state regulation. So it's kind of nice because we're not the bad guy. We're just enforcing state regulations. So like if you come in and you want to put a turf lawn in front of a bank, you can't do that now. We don't retroactively go after previous ones, but for any modern developments coming in, you can't put grass. I'm talking Bermuda blue. There's drought-tolerant grasses you can do, but you can't, do Bermuda bluegrass in front of a bank or, between apartment buildings that aren't being used to play. You can't do it in rights of way, things of that sort. Long range, as part of our our water resource master plan, that stuff we're looking at too, as far as, changing out some city landscapes and stuff to make in the areas that are non-functional turf. Obviously, we think parks are a good place to keep our water resources in. They're used by entire neighborhoods. If you let a park go dry and die-ish and it gets all that foot traffic on it and stuff, it can severely damage the turf. Kind of our mindset is, if you don't have a lawn, come play at a park, and then you're serving hundreds of people with that water instead of just one. Another thing we are doing is we have 80 shares in the Cimarron Canal Company. That was part of the original kind of city water resource portfolio when water came from up there. On years like this, we went into the season, Cerro was relatively full. It's our emergency water backup that we can pull down into the system if needed. But where it's full and we don't see a need to refill it, and we couldn't actually flow-wise, by the time we would need to refill it, that water would have already moved down the mountain. We lease our shares back to irrigators, and so that saves the city money, but also allows that water to be used within the Bostwick Park and Shin Park water districts of Cimarron and Bostwick, that are canal companies that allows that water to go to use for irrigation and try and kind of lessen the blow for our agricultural community. So, I think there's good opportunities. We're excited that people are talking about water as much as they are, because it is extremely important to our community, and we want to be a part of that and a good steward of that. And that's what the year is looking like. Any questions?
No, doesn't look like it.
Any?
Any?
It was a doom and gloom.
Since there are no,
Was that the good news?
That was the middle bad news. That was
So
the
we're
meat in the
creating a
sandwich.
new term, though, instead of run off, it's run out.
Right.
The one thing I wanted to point out that I heard you say, and I want to reiterate, that we're not going to do any mandatory restrictions this year, for sure, but we do encourage all of our citizens to be responsible stewards of our water.
Yeah,
And
every
we do
drop.
have like the mayor's water challenge that every year goes through, and so there's an opportunity for our citizens to help.
Absolutely, yeah. Every drop we don't use stays in Ridgeway. And so that helps curtail against that risk of having to get as far as mandatory cuts in a future year. Yeah, every bit absolutely counts. It doesn't just go by and get used by Arizona, which some people think. It stays in Ridgeway and is available to reduce our risk for upcoming years. Absolutely.
Scott, from my experience, I was raised on a farm east of town, and before the dams were put in, and they would talk about they'd reduce our water down to 40% and 30%, and the farmers survived. And I think that it might seem kind of drastic, but I believe that not only would the communities survive, but the farmers would survive, because it goes in cycles. One year I came to Montrose to visit my parents when I was living out of town, and in March on my birthday we got over 2 foot of snow. And so it does happen, and now they're talking about this super El Nino that's supposed to be, and that might be kind of scary with the different temperatures and rain and that sort of, that might be catching us. But if we work together, I think we're gonna survive it easily. That's just my opinion, so.
Absolutely, and we agree, and that's kind of the message we're trying to promote on the social stuff too. We're actually, our campaign is partnered with water users, the county, some producers that, like, hey, we're all in this together, you know, we all have a part in doing this, and we will get through this, you know.
And I'm glad that we share, when we can, the water that we have out of Ridgeway with the local farming community. So they contribute to the city, and I see this as our contribution to the county, other than property tax.
Speaking of the county, I wanted to point out that the county is doing a water summit on the 19th. And so it's another great opportunity for our community to find out a little bit more and be able to kind of hear from other more experts, not just our expert.
Yep, and we're speaking at that as well too,
Yes.
to kind of
So the
talk
kind of
about
that
outlook.
a little bit broader vision of what that means. So it's another great opportunity. You can register online on the county website. So if you want to go to that, that's a great opportunity to hear more.
Any other questions in council? Public? Yeah, sir, if you come right over here and then state your name for the record.
I state my name, Ron Smith. Just a comment, I was sitting here last year with this water information, which I thought you did a great job on, and before that meeting was over, I came to realize that we were probably wasting some of our taxpayer money on things that we don't need. And I understand beautification, but with the, I think in particular West Main, as that was being developed, we took the initiative apparently to run irrigation water lines for these bushes along the sidewalk. I don't think we got our bang for a buck. And I'm just asking the city council and designers and so forth, when we go into this, all of the next projects after project or whatever, that we consider that bang for the buck, and also in consideration for the fact that we've got a growing population and housing here, which is going to be more water demand. So please take that into consideration. I don't think we got our bang for the buck.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Smith before we bring up Mr. Brown? No? From the, yeah, from the council? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
My name is John Brown. This is different for me, coming up and talking about water instead of some other program. But I believe it was last year or year before, the board talked about we were well within our allocation And with our rate of population increase and housing development, that we were well within the amount that we could use for domestic use for the water that's available to us. And also at that time, there was a discussion that possibly run 2 lines to each house, one with clean water or potable water and one with gray water, and using the gray water for watering our lawns. And the potable water, of course, is what we would use interior of the house. But I'm concerned about our increase of population in this area and what we're building. We do need, for our housing, we do need affordable, and I think it's going to get to the point where we need apartment buildings like what we're getting down there on Ogden. But I just see us increasing and increasing and increasing. It's almost every available acre of land is being sucked in and more houses going in instead of commercial property. If we keep doing that, we're going to run out of water much sooner, in my mind, than realistic. And I know that water conservation would definitely be the way to help us on that. And I would like to see a lot more strict regulation of water conservation. I know many, many years ago, back in the dark ages, when we took our Model A's into to wash, we could only wash either an odd day or an even day, depending on if we were on the north side or south side of the street, or if we were an even-numbered house or an odd-numbered house, that kind of a thing. You know, those kind of restrictions. We do need good quality restrictions, but we also need some good guidelines, and appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Can I say something to John? On that issue about gray water, at one time, I was going to school out in California, and there was during a real water crisis in California. And so what actually the city of Ventura did was to allow people to go and redo their plumbing so they could actually take that gray water, which was specific to certain areas of the house that you could put in there, and that gray water would either go out into your yard or into a tank that you could pump the water out. And they also at one time were issuing specifically for low flow shower heads and stuff like that, and made it a requirement. From what I gather now, everything is low flow that you buy for sinks and showers and that sort of stuff. But the gray water had a few issues with the fact that in order to really use gray water, you had to go, say, special not shampoos, but yeah, shampoos, because shower was allowed to be one of them, and soap for your washing machine, and for your, certain other areas that were specific to that you could use gray water for. So it was a fairly complicated process, but as far as I know, they kind of ended up doing some stuff using gray water. So gray water isn't bad to use it, but there are some requirements. You don't want to contaminate the ground or your flowers, kill them all, or the grass. So.
Well, I do know that here in Colorado, in Montrose, as I can recollect, that our water bill and our sewer bill is based on how much water we have coming in, since we don't have a meter on our sewer line going out. So if you're using 2,000 gallons of water, then you're being billed for 2,000 gallons of sewer treatment, or whatever the percentage is. It's still based on that.
That one's, so on commercial it is. Residential, it's fixed. So your sewer bill is the same every month regardless of how much water is used at a residential.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. My water bill is so low anyway that, you know, maybe I should take a bath a little bit more often. I don't know. But I do appreciate everything that's everybody doing. And Ed, you are as old as I am, so yes, I remember those days, shower heads and everything. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
If you want, I can maybe touch on just a little bit of that if you'd like.
No, absolutely. That'd be great.
Just so you guys are aware of some of the background on that. So, yeah, yep. On the, running out of water piece, it's something we watch very closely as part of our water resource master planning. So understanding, kind of the boom's not necessarily the right word, but, a lot of interest in Montrose, a lot of economic activity, subdivision activity. We wanted to make sure, and we were starting to get questions of, do you want to expand your water district and serve more customers? To be able to answer those questions responsibly, to make sure that we don't overextend ourselves on our water resources, we did a pretty extensive water resource master planning effort, mostly about a year and a half ago. Actually just wrapped up on the report. It's in for review now, so it's not finalized yet. But we looked at our entire water district with what we expect, so updating all of the land use patterns we're seeing for the higher density, because that's definitely the trend in housing. And even at that, to make sure that we had enough water resources. So we have, like I said, we have a 10,000 acre foot pool. We use on average about 4,000 to 5,000 depending on the year now, so only half of them. So at rough math, you can be double the population you are now. But a lot of that, some of the city limits, some of the growth of the city is actually outside of our water district as well. So that's part of it. But even at full build out of our district, we're still with a 10% buffer, still have enough water with our current allocations. And again, you saw in Ridgeway, even on the bad years, they're really well buffered because you have this discretionary pool above the municipal pool. And then we also have 3,000 acre feet out of the Cimarron Canal Company as a buffer on top of that as well. Some of those you'd have to do some development to utilize those. But big picture, we feel and it's not something we just do once and forget. It's, trends, things take, development patterns change, trends within the water world change. So it's something we're continually watching. From a planning perspective of where we're sitting now, we don't feel that there's a chance of us running out of water in the next 50 years. And that's kind of at least the planning horizon we're looking at. And 20 years from now, if that's different, we would change our policies and look to expand our water resources as well.
And that's based on standard growth?
It's based on kind of the new growth. So looking at the trend towards higher density. So we went through and redid the entire land use map within our district for all the development we're seeing and what we expect to be higher density. And higher density isn't always higher use too. It's unique because some of those larger neighborhoods, they put in really big, large, green, lush lawns. They're using more than, depending on the nature of the housing and how dense it is. But so looking at all modern land use trajectories. The gray water thing, so it's also the biggest thing we can do to help the system is reduce outdoor watering, which is in most cases, a bulk of that is turf. So like the gray water things, using irrigation water, and think three different terms. Raw water is untreated irrigation water, think of ditch water. Gray water is water that comes out of the house, has been previously used, and in some cases they put back on the lawn. Like I said, everything in water is trade-offs, and so if you were to add a gray water system to a house, it adds about 10,000 or so, maybe 7,000 in all the secondary reconfigured plumbing, permitting, all those things. Cities have turned up those programs, but usually that just means more turf. Or if you have an irrigation system on your house, you see anybody that has irrigation water is putting out way more turf than ones that are having to pay for that water, which helps with the treated water supply conservation side of things, but actually increases overall use, which is worse for the western U.S. Because if you can water turf, you might. Also, cost of housing comes into play. So if places that have made that mandatory, that's just that much more that the price of housing is going up, and that's its own problem. So like I said, you just kind of move stuff around from one problem to another. But something we watch very closely. Our biggest focus is reducing outdoor watering because even if you have a high flush toilet, that's water still goes through the treatment plant, ends up back in the river, and there's irrigators in our region downstream that can use that water. Whereas if it goes on a lawn, it evaporates, it's gone, and generally not recaptured within our region. So that's where we think our lowest hanging fruit is. And again, we're seeing that the trend between the state regulations and people's natural awareness, and we want to continue to promote that, is the trend of per capita water use and turf on new homes is definitely down. We want to keep that trajectory going.
Thanks. Project 7?
On to Project 7. So this is, I think, to update, get new council up to speed on where Project 7 is, but there's also been quite a bit of change since probably the last time our previous council was updated. So I've kind of taken on a new role in this project. Generally wasn't involved until about 2 months ago, where Project 7 board decided to stand up what they called the Technical Advisory Group. The southern project, so I'm probably aware, they were looking at a 5 million gallon a day treatment plant down by Kelowna-ish area, a raw water line coming out of the dam up to that plant, and then a water line coming from that plant into town here to distribute that water. The project started out, it's good. Project had good reasons for the project, but as they kept going, the cost just kept getting larger and larger and larger and larger, to where it kind of made all of the users go, or not all of them, but a few of them to go, is this best bang for our buck and cost effective? The costs went up so high that is it worth that? Are there better, the question kind of started coming up, are there better ways to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish without that large price tag? And the major drawback from that as well, or the kind of two major things I think that challenge it. Obviously, it's way out there, a lot of infrastructure to get to it, a lot of infrastructure to get out of it, but it's treating challenging water quality as well. The hardness is really high because the water would be coming directly out of Uncompahgre. And that ups your treatment costs. You got to deal with all the softening, but also what to do with all of the brine. Obviously costs went up, but another big piece of that too is there's only a 5 MGD plant. So if you had one of these major supply disruptions due to a wildfire or, God forbid, a Gunnison Tunnel collapse or something, and those were prolonged, like a multi-year event, to only run on 5 MGD, that's winter water use, so you'd have no outdoor watering the entire summer within the entire district. And that's, from a implementation standpoint and control of that, that's very difficult. And how do you distribute all that, because we're all in it together? So those kind of core things kind of drove everyone to take a step back and go, what are we truly trying to accomplish? And are there other ways we can accomplish that and get a lot of the same goals, likely at lower cost, with I think in my mind even additional resiliency than we would have otherwise had. Another unique piece that came up kind of later in the game was the actual capacity of the existing plant. So the existing plant is rated at 27.6 MGD. I think for the most part, they operate in this range down here on a typical kind of peak summer now. I guess right here. The operators kind of chimed up and said, we're not comfortable with a lot over 20 MGD to run the plant for a sustained period. So you can do a lot of things for a really short amount of time. The analogy they use, what's the rated towing capacity of your truck? Like, do you really want to go to that pound and then tow it over the mountains? Probably not. Sorry, 1 million gallons per day. Yep. So yeah, that's a term they use a lot. Sorry. And yeah, please interrupt me if I spout other acronyms that I assume everybody knows. But this is out of their thing. So you look at, it's not just a resiliency product in our minds. It is a capacity product. If you're truly only at 20 to 21 is what they're saying, they can comfortably operate the plant. You also have a capacity issue that's coming into play within the next 15 to 20 years. So that was a kind of a key takeaway that what they called the TAG group, Technical Advisory Group, kind of brought to the board. And I'll run through the rest of these quickly. We'll make a video if anybody wants to really dive into the details that we're putting out with all of the other entities to kind of share with their administrative staff. But the existing plant had some operational vulnerabilities. During peak summer, if something goes down, there's not a lot of redundancy there. You have a single treatment train, so if you need to do any major rehab or redos, your only window to work on them is the winter, which is a challenge operationally. We kind of revisited the risk matrix, and I won't dive into these and bore you, but looking at, what really are the risks, which are the highest impact. This is all plotted by high probability, high impact, low probability, but high impact. So like Gunnison Tunnel collapse, obviously not likely, but would be a large challenge. If it did, water quality things, all of that. We also looked at financials, so a big takeaway was, we don't want to get to where they get laser focused on that southern plant, get it financed, and then realize, oh, we need to do a $20 million project at the existing plant. Well, we've already stretched all our financing and we can't. Or, the water bills, it'd be an unacceptable level of burden for the cost of the project. So making sure that they're taking a comprehensive look of what needs to be done throughout the entire system, which, could include some work down at the southern end, which it had its hydraulic reasons to keep, Tri-County has some capacity challenges down there. But also the capital needs for the existing plant and Fairview Reservoir, which are all part of that larger system, making sure that we don't do a mega project now and then can't afford a routine project that comes up, slightly after. And the last piece the TAG group kind of took away from is there's kind of felt there was some room for improvement on the existing emergency operations plans. So we have a lot of emergency infrastructure. This is a picture of Cerro. In the emergency, you can only push so much down that system, so then how do you divide that amongst the various users? Those are city water rights, how does that work administratively? If you have a break in the pipeline going towards Delta, are there ways to interconnect the systems that do exist outside of the trunk line and still try and get a minimum amount of water to keep them in an emergency supply? Those sort of things that we felt were really low-hanging fruit that could take place now with relatively with not a lot of infrastructure, and make sure that a lot of our risk reduction is happening as it can, without a mega project. So that was another piece that the TAG group kind of recognized as an opportunity for the near future. The recommendation that was made to the Project 7 board that they agreed with moving forward, and we're working on the nuts and bolts of moving forward, was to really do a close look at the existing facility with the master plan towards resiliency, modernizing the treatment process there so that you've fixed a lot of the vulnerabilities that exist at the existing plant, and while doing that, creating resiliency for some of these external forces that we couldn't control. So like if these examples, like if the Gunnison Tunnel were to collapse, how can you work with water users to get water from the Uncompahgre River to the head of the treatment plant and still run that plant, but with an alternate water source? And all the partners on that, water users, Cimarron, Bostwick, all those, they all play into that. They're extremely eager to help. Kind of takeaway point was if the Gunnison Tunnel collapses, we're not irrigating for the most part. And so, those systems become available to move water around, and they would be happy to partner in it. I was really encouraged by, that's just that partnership spirit of all the, it's not like, oh, it's our water or your water. Like in a true emergency like that, we're all working together to make sure, we all drink water, but we all also eat lettuce, or not lettuce, but other sweet corn. There we go. And like making sure we have systems in place that we can keep that existing plant running. If you have a disruption in water quality, the existing plant is pretty finicky in its treatment technology. It's an older treatment technology. But if that plant can be modernized to also treat a broader spectrum of water quality, including water from the Uncompahgre, in an emergency situation, you might be dealing with more hardness, but you're in water. Which, I'd rather have a little white on my shower head than be out of water, and I think most people would in an emergency. So those sorts of things, understanding what can be done at the existing plant and should be done, both in the name of resiliency and growth, long-term capacity at the plant, and then also taking a look at emergency operations. So developing those plans that are warranted now, that if we have our bad day tomorrow, we can quickly adapt and work towards keeping the system as operational as possible in the event of an emergency today with existing infrastructure, not necessarily a secondary one. So with that, we recommended we would work towards getting out a request for proposals to procure those two pieces for consideration by the board. Kind of the technical advisory group is looking to do that work ourselves. And this is kind of how they're currently set up. So you have Project 7, they have legal and financial consultants. And then they had on-call engineering, then they had the resiliency design in Garver, which had sub-consultants as well, government affairs, all of that. We felt that this is kind of a clean place that, we can run with this big next piece of the pie, which is the facility master plan and the emergency operations plans. with the technical advisory group, working with Product 7 staff directly, hiring, a consultant that would work with, this kind of group and advise the board. We didn't feel the need for additional, on-call, kind of permanent staff. The idea being, you take all of that, you kind of come up with a comprehensive plan of what needs to be done for various reasons and what does it accomplish. So understanding, no product will be a silver bullet that fixes all of the risk, but here's the ones and here's how much risk is mitigated for this price. Finding, what we're calling kind of realistic practical solutions that can help the long-term viability of our water system going into the future. Getting consensus on that, and then getting consensus on, how you would pay for it and when, and how, when the projects would take place. So the ability to pay and when, and if financing comes into play, but also how the disbursements work between the various entities of Project 7, and get all of that, get the plan honed out. So everybody's on the same page in agreement, and you have full buy-in, up and down through the various entities, but even within their organizations throughout all of the various staff. Say, yep, this is a achievable plan. We can do it. It's reasonable for our ratepayers, and then work towards implementation. So then you're getting the org chart larger again. So then you're going through procurement processes to bring on design engineers, government affairs, grants, all those things. But you're doing it not until needed. You're not getting too far ahead of your skis, and not until you have buy-in. And then also kind of being realistic about the financing side. Not being fully reliant on grants. Like, oh, we could do this if all this comes through. Well, we all know grants aren't great right now. And so making sure that what the plan that does come out, it works for the entire system, for the planning horizon 50 plus years, and is achievable. We don't know what that looks like yet, but we're excited to figure that out, and it'll take time. But we have a little bit of time to get that going, and hopefully kind of steer this towards where everybody's really excited about where it's going and how they're going to implement it. So, and I think that's generally about it. That's a kind of a shortened version of that, but any questions on that or the project?
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your participation in this TAG, okay? 15 years or longer ago, I was the city representative to Project 7. And at that time, the discussion came up about using the water and building a plant up there by Ridgeway. At that time, the studies that we had done proved that the water was really too hard. And it wasn't, they could probably filter it down that it was drinkable, but it would still be very hard on our infrastructure. And that's why we nixed the project, and we put in a couple of more storage tanks over there. So again, I'd like to thank you for your participation in that, as well as the fact that you using a little common sense and being more practical in the direction that you're going with this. And the other thing I wanted to ask was, when I was little, I used to go fishing in a place called Montrose Reservoirs. That was probably up there on the backside of the mountain from Buckhorn Lakes. Now, are those things still, because I believe we used to get water from that years ago, and are those lakes still functional? And I mean, we had to pay $2 to go through the gate to go over there and go fishing. So, and we called them Sigafoos Lake. So,
yeah, I think they have like 5 different names. Even Cerro is sometimes called Montrose Reservoir on some maps. So, I think I know which ones you're talking about. I think they call them Fish Creek 1 or Fish Creek 1 and 2 or Fish Lake 1 and 2.
Yeah, there was 2 of them.
Yeah, I think one of the 2 is back online. So those are operated by, I don't know if it's, so Bostwick Park and Cimarron Canal Company are 2 different. I think they're operated by Cimarron Canal Company, and they just recently rehabbed one of them, and one of them is back in line and full. They actually did the work in-house themselves. The state was satisfied. It had some outlet seepage work that they were working on. So I think one of them is back up and running. I'm going off memory here, so don't want to ultimately for the record, but I think one of the 2 is back on, and there is hope to get 2 back on. And what those systems do is it's just that much more. They have fill rights on drainages that would otherwise direct flow into the Cimarron stream and Cimarron Canal and not necessarily be usable. These help buffer flows either in the Cimarron River or the canal, I can't remember which one they're connected to, but that allow more storage and water control to happen upstream and prolong the irrigation season for the Cimarron Canal and Bostwick Park system. So I think those are still in play. They are important, and I think one of them was 150 acre feet or so. You know, by comparison, Cerro's about 700. So it's, you know, there's a substantial size. It's not a small amount of water. That I think has helped bolstering that whole system, which we are a part of because we're part of the Cimarron Canal Company. So, so yeah, I think encouraging news on that front that they're back on. I don't know if they charge $2 or not. You have to ask Alan at Cimarron Canal Company. Yeah, I've heard they're great. Yeah, and I don't know what they're doing for the fishery side of it or not, but
Different than Buckhorn Lakes.
but different than Buckhorn Lakes. Yep.
They're not ours.
Correct. They're not. Yeah, the only reservoir we have is Cerro, and then we pay into Ridgeway to repay the construction of that through Tri-County's agreement with the Bureau.
Any other questions?
And I guess generally, does that sound okay? Stay the course? I mean, we're kind of, part of this is a check-in to make sure that everybody's kind of okay with the direction we're headed.
I appreciate
Stay on
it.
that course.
I was at the Project 7 meeting where you were giving that presentation, so I appreciated the fact that we're looking at alternatives as opposed to just a $200 million project. I think that most of our people here in Montrose, especially those on fixed incomes, appreciate that as well. So, any questions from the public? Yes, sir.
Did I hear you say that Buckhorn Lakes is not city? I thought Buckhorn Park was city, and it has a big sign as you enter Buckhorn Lakes area.
Yep. So the city owns the land under Buckhorn Lakes. The reservoirs are operated by Buckhorn Ranch. So if there's any work that needs done on the embankments, the state calls the ranch. And then the ranch actually controls the releases out of the reservoir. So we don't have control over the content releases or any water shares or rights associated with the lake itself. We own the underlying land.
I was just asking from an angler's point of view.
Yeah, and that's the challenge is, it's a great fishery and great place to camp, but if the irrigation needs the water, or irrigators need the water, they can pull it, and, we don't have any rights to take them out of, to curtail or anything to keep water in there for our purposes, but again, it's, people still enjoy it kind of at most levels, and we haven't filed any water rights on that.
Are there any fish in it?
I'm hearing so, yeah, I've heard great things, yeah. Plenty of people go up there to, camp and fish still, as far as I know, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Next on the agenda is staff reports, and we have Deputy Police Chief Tim Cox.
Good morning. Today I'm going to go over our quarterly stats, our 2025 versus 2026, and I'll answer any questions throughout or at the end. Please let me know. We haven't had any change, no homicides. Robberies are up from 0 to 1. Assaults are up from 45 to 57. Assaults on peace officers, which is good, is down from 4 to 1. Sex assaults are down from 20 to 7. Burglary of residents is down 11 to 6. Commercial burglaries are up from 5 to 6. And usually what we're seeing a lot of that is storage units is usually our commercial burglaries that we're seeing. Thefts overall are down from 154 to 131. Motor vehicle theft is down from 13 to 12. Criminal mischief is up from 36 to 40. Domestic violence is up from 40 to 43. And our public peace, which usually is anything that we talked about above, besides that is like disorderly harassment, et cetera, is down from 253 to 198. Our felony crimes overall are up from 92 to 103. Misdemeanor crimes are down from 519 to 472. Total incidents are down a little bit from 8,082 to 8,024. The next still is our CAD log volume is up from 79,188 to 87,275. And what the difference is between incidents, which would be if we made a traffic stop or a domestic violence, that counts as an incident. The CAD log is each one of those incidents, if complexity. So if they have more complex crime, you have a lot more, either the dispatchers making more entries or key touches, or an officer is. That doesn't like reporting, that's in our Spillman system, our CAD system with which we communicate with dispatch. Traffic accidents are up from 187 to 235. DUI accidents are up from 5 to 7. DUI observations by officers is down from 25 to 19. Traffic citations are up from 385 to 447. Traffic contacts are up from 1,073 to 1,446, and no traffic fatalities. The interesting part about that, usually when we up the number of traffic contacts, the amount of our traffic stops our officers are making, usually that reduces our DUI accidents and our DUI observations and accidents. So we're not quite sure why that is right now, but we are working on that. We're trying to really target, especially with the number of DUI accidents, and we're trying to up our observations and make more arrests and traffic stops. So we do get state grants that we're working on so we can make DUI overtime shifts for officers. Just to make you guys aware of that. Now going to arrests. Our felony arrests, adult arrests are down from 44 to 39. Our juvenile felony arrests are up from 2 to 5. Misdemeanor adult arrests are up from 172 to 176. Juvenile misdemeanor arrests up 19 to 41. Drug arrests, excluding marijuana, are down from 53 to 46. Weapons involved, non-firearms, are up from 7 to 16. Firearms involved are up from 5 to 8. Our officer use of force are down from 17 to 8, which is really good as well. And then the last one I'm going to report on is our mental health contacts holds is down a little bit from 93 to 91. And then our co-responder referrals and responses are down 158 to 130. And a little bit of that, we believe we're down to 1 co-responder right now. And a reminder, our co-responder is grant funded. We got a grant last year for $300,000, and we partner with Access Health. We partner with between Montrose PD, Montrose SO, Delta PD, and Delta SO in a partnership with Access. So great program. I'll be coming to you guys here in the near future. I think we were awarded $280,000 again, and once we're able to get a contract put together with the state, I'll be coming in front of you to hopefully re-up that contract. Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
No questions from the council? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Now we'll open up for general questions or comments from the council. Anyone? I have a few things I'd like to bring up. One of the things is we're going through the campaign that was a pretty regular thing was e-bike regulations. There were citizens who had let us know that there were incidents where kids were nearly killed on their e-bikes. And so I would like to at least discuss, and all of these things are things that I'd like to discuss with the council moving forward as possibilities for ordinances where we can do something with e-bike regulations to enhance them. Do we have any kind of consensus on that?
I would definitely like to work with the police to figure out what they could use or what they need to help enforce it or whatever, because, yeah, they are crazy little kids.
I would agree with that. I think that I would like to get a lot more information from our PD, a lot more data as far as the validity of, and there's a difference between valid reports and anecdotal reports.
Sure.
And I would like to get a little bit more information before we have a full-on discussion on that item.
Okay. Yeah, that's
I remember a while back, both you, Dave, and I mentioned the fact that people were telling us that they were having incidents with e-bikes, and I'd be interested in finding out some more information about that, just to see, because I don't want to be a draconian type city council by sitting there and saying, hey, we need more ordinance here, we need more ordinance here, because that really takes away from individuals' responsibility. Sure. But it would be interesting, because I did have a few calls recently in my new position that people asking questions pertaining to that. And one incident where a person said that they actually, by moving out of the way of an e-bike, pulled some muscles in their back, and then they were going to other things. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, maybe we could look at it based on the fact that Dave and I had heard about it once before. So, yeah.
I guess, and I agree with what's being said, and I don't want to put you on the spot, and maybe you want to defer the answer to this, but just generally, does the PD perceive this to be a mounting, growing issue?
We do, and it's statewide. It's across the whole state, and there's regulations. Not all of them have come to fruition yet, but different classifications of e-bike, and but a lot of that doesn't come into full effect until 2027. But we've actually been talking with other staff members, our Parks and Streets Department. It's an issue. Right now, there's no classification, so you got a motorized, anything under 50 cc, but it's motorized gas combustible engine. We don't have anything for e-bikes. So it's something we need to address. We've been talking about it as staff, so we'd be happy to help and have further conversations on it.
Because I was just curious about, would the brand-new Harley Davidson electric bike be classified as an e-bike or a motorcycle?
Yeah, right now, there's no classifications or anything on that. That's what we're working on. But right now, so anybody, if they're operating any kind of a regular bicycle, an e-bike on a sidewalk or on our trails, they still have to follow as a pedestrian, the law as a pedestrian. If they're on the roadway, some of these e-bikes, you see like, they're dirt bikes basically, but they're electric. They still have to obey by all the safety rules. They have to have the proper equipment, lighting, reflectors, all of that. So we can enforce the law on that, but speed regulations, we're seeing issues in our parks going, e-bikes or these off-road motorcycles that are electric in our park systems and speed. So that's something we need to consider.
But no license is required to operate one, right?
If they're on the roadway, yes, you're supposed to have, but that gets into the different classifications that Colorado's looking at, class 1, 2, and 3. So further discussion.
And that's only if they're in the main roadway, not if they're on the bike lane.
Correct.
Because the bike lane is a different category as well.
I know, again, when I was young here in Montrose, we had a requirement or the city did, on bicycles, that you had to go down and get a license for your bicycle. It was cheap, but that also helped them, the police department, I think there was only 2 or maybe 3, that if somebody stole the bike, they could see that little tag on the bike and say, oh, this belongs to, and who are you, that kind of thing. So,
Is there anything school-wise that the police can do or schools can do to, I know when we were kids, like the cops would come in and show like proper safety, hand signals, that kind of stuff with bikes. Is there anything that you guys would think would be helpful that we could work with the school district on?
We can. We used to do bike rodeos quite often in partnership with other nonprofits or our school district. We haven't done them in a while, but I think it would be good once we address this e-bike situation to kind of come back and educate our community on if we come up with a municipal code for it. But right now, like I said, the whole state, we're kind of in limbo. So if we get a group together and address it, I think it would be beneficial. But to answer your question, we haven't done that in some time, but maybe that's something to relook at.
The other thing that I wanted to address was the taxing of gold and silver bullion and monetized coins in the city. There is a state exemption for that item, but we do not have one here in the city of Montrose. The state law allows for home ruled cities to tax gold and silver. I don't know what you guys think, but I don't think that we should be. And I'd like to see about having an ordinance which would eliminate that tax. But just a thought.
And just a little background, this is a very common sales tax exemption. It is a sales tax exemption in the state of Arizona when I worked at Department of Revenue. It is at the state level here. It's not really the sale of a good so much as an investment. I believe that is why it's generally accepted as a sales tax exemption.
What does that amount to from a revenue standpoint for the city? I mean, it's gotta
I
be
wish I
much.
could tell you,
It's gotta be negligible.
but
It is negligible.
it likely isn't a large portion of our revenue. I don't think that's what we're
I'm not paying
thriving
any
on
taxes
here.
it.
I don't think it'll have an impact on the city's budget, and that's another reason for it, is that I think it's more of a principle thing for me than it is anything else.
Because it's more of a commodity or trade or investment.
Well, it's the only thing that the Constitution says is real money. So, from my perspective, that's what I'm looking at. And then a couple of other things. Again, I'll refer back to the campaign and.
Mayor, before you move
Yes.
on, am I getting a head nod to run this as an ordinance? Kind of at least bring it forward?
I apologize, I had to step out of
Oh, sure.
Gold and silver bullion.
Yeah, so the mayor is bringing up the fact that the city taxes the sale of gold, silver, and coins for numismatic value, which is essentially your collector coins and everything like this. We tax it at the city level. The state does not tax it. It is a very common sales tax exemption. It's not just here in the state of Colorado. Arizona, when I worked with Department of Revenue there, it's an exemption there, and most of their cities, if not all cities.
And it
I
it
would
have
support,
neglig-
I would support taking that direction, but I'd also just like to know what kind of revenue we're talking about.
Sure.
That the city,
Absolutely.
if we're gonna adopt an ordinance that I'm not opposed to, I still wanna know what the financial impacts are.
Sure.
I'm in the same boat with Councilman Reed. I'd really be interested in seeing what kind of revenues are generated and what aren't generated. Based on the last couple of months of revenue report, I see revenues are up, but they are kind of trending down, at least in my opinion. And so these revenues, taxes that are in the city are important to the city because we don't have a property sales tax, tax. And so we actually exist on sales tax revenues. That's the police department, the city staff, the road department, all that. And if people aren't spending money, and they might be, and if they are, it's over the internet, and those funds don't go to the city, they actually go to the state. So every time somebody pushes the button for Amazon or something, and they do that purchase, that's revenues leaving the city. And if we want to continue to keep, I'm an infrastructure, to keep our roads, our curb, gutter, sidewalk, our sewer, and our water running, then we have to generate some kind of revenues from someplace. So that's just me pontificating.
Sounds great. So what I will do is I will get the information that's requested, like how much generally this is going to be of our revenue. I'll try to get that within the next 2 weeks and put it on the next work session. If we are able to get that information, if not, it'll be a month out. But I will bring this forward.
Thank you. The only other two things that I want to discuss today would be the potential of moving the elections, for the municipal elections, to November instead of March. There would be some details that would have to be worked out. And then also, well, let's get I guess we get a head nod or whatever on that, if we want to move that.
I would be opposed to that.
Yeah, I'm in favor of general election.
I'm opposed.
I'd have to see more information before I could make a decision. I need to know what it's gonna cost the city or what it's not gonna cost the city. What are the savings, if there are any, and what kind of problem that it would create with the clerk's office. Because, I don't know, I just like more information before I commit to anything.
Sure.
Well, Ed, I agree with you. To me, I don't know what the financial implications are one way or the other, but I think there are other considerations beyond financial that in my mind would dictate against it, and that's why I'm not in favor of an ordinance to do that.
I'm not in favor of the ordinance right now. But
No, I know that.
I think if it would make a difference to the city and to the public, then I would say, hey, yeah, we should, but I need more information.
I'm fine if we want to have a discussion about it amongst council.
Sure. So I believe there may be more charter amendments being proposed. So what we'll do right now, at least for this one, unless the next one that's brought forth, city staff will get more information, pros, cons, how this would go, everything like that, for purposes of a November municipal election, where it would always be combined with the county, and bring it forth. I know we will have a tight window if we are going to get this
I was
onto
going
a
to ask
ballot.
you, offhand, do you know what the
Do you
timing
know
is to?
dates? Did we have that
Yeah, at least
kicked out?
Usually it's about July 4th.
Right.
So it's my understanding the mayor's had discussions with the city attorney about quite a few charter amendments, so I would recommend we do not piecemeal them, and we bring them all to a work session and talk about a whole list of proposed charter amendments at one time. And then we can, have a generalized discussion over the topics and the merits of the different things, and then staff can go back and research each of those items.
Right.
That way we keep the dialogue all in one topic, rather than doing one thing at a time, because we'll never meet these deadlines otherwise. And we had a request from the city attorney for the clerk to show us the timeline for charter amendments. And it looks like, and we can forward this out to everybody, but to place anything on the ballot for November 3rd, 2026 coordinated election, we would need 100 days prior, so Thursday, July 23rd, or because the actual date's a Sunday, it moves it up to the last business day of that particular week. So Thursday, July 23rd. If by 100 days prior, City Council's taken action to place an item on the November 3rd ballot, we notify the county clerk in writing that we will have a ballot item. A written notice is usually just an email from the city clerk saying that we want to put something on the ballot with a resolution or ordinance attached. And then 70 days prior, Tuesday, August 25th, would be the last day to have a signed IGA in place with the county clerk to run that election. And then 60 days prior, Thursday, September 3rd, last day to certify the ballot content with the county clerk. And so it looks like we do have plenty of time if we want to start the discussions of having items placed on the ballot between now and July.
The only other thing that I would ask is, if we're going to have a work session to discuss what the proposed amendments are, that we be given a list of those amendments substantially in advance of a work session, so we have the opportunity to clearly study the proposal and the implications of each one of them.
Is 2 weeks sufficient, you think?
Well, it depends on how many we're talking about. If we're talking about 2 or 3, no. So if you give me an idea of how many we're talking about, I'd be better prepared to
Probably
answer.
6.
I think we need more than 2 weeks. I'd say 3 weeks.
Okay.
prior to any discussion, we be given as council the proposed amendments, and then that period of time to study them individually and be prepared to have an informed discussion.
That's fair.
And I would agree with that as well, because I think that also gives staff time to research implications, costs, effectiveness, and impact. And that way, when their presentation to us on that date will be a lot more substantial and a lot more informed, and that'll give us a better basis for our decisions as well.
I think that's absolutely fair. I can work with you, Chris, on getting that nailed down for very specifics on all of that, and then we can put it out in 2 weeks. At the next work session, everyone will have it, or even before that.
Because I want to also point out that the last time we tried to do this last charter revision, that was a 3-year process of input and discussion and both advice from legal. So it was a very involved process for this last time. So I want to make sure that we're not shorting ourselves on the information side.
Sure, it's understandable.
And I know we've had a discussion, I don't know if there are any other charter amendments that any other individual council member would like to, if this does go, be on the ballot. So if everyone could send me, that would be great.
It'd be easier if we know what's already being proposed.
Agreed.
I mean, I can't tell, I
But I
don't want
then-
to say, I think we should do this and find out that's for
Right,
people.
well, if 4 other
Yeah.
people did it, then, I'll synthesize everything down so that we're, okay.
Presumably, if the way we have done it in the past is the way we would intend to do it this go-round, would be, it's an up or down vote on all of the proposed amendments. We're not suggesting separate ballot language for each amendment.
I would suggest a separate ballot item for each different thing, because then the people of the city can make a decision on each one, rather than a grouping.
Do you realize how that's going to complicate the ballot?
It'll be the only thing on the city ballot during that
But it's
that
in
election.
November.
I understand that. And the whole reason for that is to make sure that as many people as possible participate, and the voice of the public is truly heard on that. And that's the reason why I think it's important that it's done in November, and the whole reason why I'm proposing moving the election. But that's a whole nother issue. Having the largest participation possible is critical in my mind to making sure that we have the voice of the people heard. But we'll get it all together, and then if anybody else has anything on top of that, then we can address that as well. But having said that,
Yeah, I would like to incorporate some of the basic housekeeping cleanup language, modifying to best practice that we had incorporated in the last attempt. Just updating gender references that are, too specific or not specific enough.
Sure.
Some of those things that we
Yeah.
had
And-
put on our last one.
I'm happy to sit down with any council member, discuss what we want to push forward, or at least bring forward to the group to discuss at a work session, and then move forward on that, if we do.
sounds good. Any other questions or comments?
I had comments, but not about the charter. I would like to see about doing a policy. Doesn't need to be an ordinance, but it could be just turning on Facebook comments back on for city posts. I don't think city staff needs to respond, but just be able to leave them open for public to comment however they see fit. That is something that I would like to see.
Yeah, we talked about that. We can look at that. I mentioned it to Chief Hall. He wants to sit down with you and talk to you about that before making any decisions on the police department website in particular. He's at LPO training in Grand Junction. He'll be back on Thursday. So we haven't made any staff decisions on whether we're going to do that or not yet. We want to make sure that the department heads have a discussion on it, and then specifically the police department. They had a lot of issues this last year with attacks on police officers that were not, valid or substantiated, and it caused a lot of issues. So we're talking about those things.
Anything else? No? Oh, we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, members of the public, very much for being here. Oh.